Have you ever wondered how we know what we know? Is it through experience or through reasoning? These questions lead us into the heart of an age-old philosophical debate between two major approaches to understanding reality: empiricism and rationalism. Picture this. On one side of the philosophical arena we have empiricism. The empiricists believe that knowledge comes from sensory experience. In other words, we learn from what we see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. It's like biting into a hot slice of pizza for the first time. You don't know it's hot until you've felt the burn on your tongue, right? That's empiricism. On the other side, we have rationalism. The rationalists argue that knowledge comes from innate ideas and reasoning. They believe that we're born with certain knowledge already imprinted in our minds, and we use reasoning to uncover these truths. It's like solving a complex puzzle. You have all the pieces from the start, but you need to figure out how they fit together to see the bigger picture. That's rationalism. These two philosophical approaches may seem like night and day, but they both seek to answer the same fundamental question: how do we know what we know? Empiricists argue it's through experience, while rationalists claim it's through reasoning. But here's the twist: these aren't just abstract theories. They inform our everyday lives, shaping our beliefs, attitudes, and actions. From the scientific method to our legal systems, from how we approach education to how we navigate personal relationships, the tension between empiricism and rationalism is ever present. As we embark on this journey of understanding, let's remember that the quest for knowledge has always been a tug-of-war between experience and reasoning. Empiricism, a doctrine as old as Aristotle, has had a profound impact on the way we perceive reality. This philosophical school of thought underscores the importance of sensory experience in the acquisition of knowledge, a principle that has been woven into the fabric of our intellectual history. The roots of empiricism can be traced back to ancient Greece, where Aristotle, a student of Plato, rejected his teacher's emphasis on innate ideas. Instead, Aristotle posited that all knowledge comes from experience and observation. This radical shift in thinking laid the groundwork for the empirical approach. Fast forward to the 17th century, where a new champion of empiricism emerged, John Locke. This English philosopher took Aristotle's ideas a step further, arguing that the mind at birth is a blank slate, or tabula rasa. According to Locke, all our ideas are formed through experience, whether it be the sensation of a bitter cold winter's day or the reflection upon an abstract concept like justice. This emphasis on experience as the primary source of knowledge continued to shape philosophical thought into the 18th century, with philosophers like David Hume and George Berkeley contributing their own unique perspectives to the empiricist doctrine. However, it was in the 20th century that empiricism evolved into a more rigorous and systematic philosophy known as logical positivism. This new form of empiricism, led by philosophers like A.J. Ayer and Rudolf Carnap, argued that the only meaningful statements are those that can be verified empirically. In other words, if it can't be tested or observed, it's meaningless. This evolution of empiricism, from Aristotle's observational approach to Locke's tabula rasa, and finally to logical positivism, reflects the doctrine's enduring influence on our intellectual landscape. These philosophers, each in their own time, challenged the status quo and pushed the boundaries of philosophical thought, cementing empiricism's place in our collective consciousness. From Aristotle to Locke, the empirical approach to knowledge has been a cornerstone in shaping our understanding of the world. On the other side of the philosophical spectrum, rationalism, with its roots in Plato, presents a different approach to knowledge. Rationalism, unlike empiricism, posits that knowledge is not only derived from sensory experience, but also from reason and innate ideas. The seeds of this philosophy were sown by none other than the ancient Greek philosopher Plato. He proposed that our senses can deceive us, and true knowledge comes from our innate understanding of the forms or ideas that exist in a non-physical realm of perfect, eternal truths. Fast forward to the 17th century, and we encounter another key figure in the development of rationalism, René Descartes. Known for his famous declaration, "I think, therefore I am," Descartes argued that our mind holds certain truths that are self-evident and do not require empirical proof. He proposed that through systematic doubt and logical deduction, we can arrive at these truths. This idea was a significant departure from the empirical approach, which relied heavily on observable evidence. But rationalism didn't stop evolving there. It took a new turn in the 20th century with the emergence of critical rationalism, Pioneered by the philosopher Karl Popper, Popper argued that while we cannot prove a theory to be true beyond doubt, we can certainly attempt to falsify it. This approach, he insisted, is the best way to inch closer to truth. Through the lens of critical rationalism, knowledge is not a static entity, but a dynamic, evolving process of continuous questioning and testing. From the metaphysical forms of Plato to the self-evident truths of Descartes and the falsifiable theories of Popper, rationalism has traversed a long and winding path. Each iteration of rationalism has offered a unique perspective on our quest for knowledge. From Plato to Descartes, rationalism has enlightened our minds and shaped our perception of reality. The philosophical underpinnings of empiricism and rationalism continue to influence our contemporary society in profound ways. Both these ideologies shape our understanding of the world and how we interact with it. In the realm of science, the modern scientific method is a clear testament to these philosophies. Empiricism, with its emphasis on sensory experience, informs the observational and experimental aspects of scientific research. On the other hand, rationalism, by prioritizing reason and logic, forms the basis of theoretical exploration and hypothesis testing. These two ideologies, though seemingly distinct, work in unison to advance our scientific knowledge. Moving on to education, both empiricism and rationalism play pivotal roles. The empirical approach encourages hands-on learning and practical application, allowing students to learn through experience. Conversely, the rationalist approach promotes critical thinking, logical reasoning, and the ability to form coherent arguments. It is the interplay of these two philosophies that fosters a comprehensive learning environment. Even in politics, these ideologies hold sway. Policy decisions often reflect an empirical approach, relying on data, statistics, and real-world outcomes. Yet rationalist principles are also evident in the formation of political ideologies, laws, and regulations, which are based on logical reasoning and philosophical principles. As we shift our gaze to pop culture, the influence of these philosophies becomes even more apparent. The empirical approach is reflected in the popularity of reality television, where viewers are drawn to the real-life experiences of others. Meanwhile, the rationalist approach is mirrored in the appeal of science fiction, where logical speculation about future societies captivates audiences. The influence of empiricism and rationalism is also evident in various sub-countercultures. Take the hacker culture, for instance. It embodies the empirical approach through its emphasis on experiential learning and problem-solving. At the same time, it reflects rationalist principles through its focus on logical reasoning and algorithmic thinking. Every time we engage with the world, we are in essence engaging with the philosophical principles of empiricism and rationalism. In the end, the dichotomy between empiricism and rationalism might not be as rigid as it seems. While traditionally these two philosophical doctrines have been viewed as opposing forces, there is a growing understanding that they might not be mutually exclusive after all. In our quest for knowledge, we often find ourselves swinging like a pendulum between the empiricists' reliance on sensory experience and the rationalists' faith in innate knowledge. However, it's important to consider the possibility of a synthesis between the two. This idea of a fusion, a sort of philosophical alchemy, is not a new notion. In fact, it was famously proposed by the 18th century philosopher Immanuel Kant. Kant, known for his critique of pure reason, suggested a radical idea. What if we could marry the empirical with the rational? He proposed a model where our minds structure the raw data of sensory experience to create knowledge. In other words, we use our reasoning capabilities to make sense of what we perceive through our senses. This is the essence of his synthetic a priori judgments. This idea is not without its critics, but it does offer a fresh perspective. It suggests that our quest for knowledge is not a zero-sum game between experience and reason, but rather a collaborative effort. It opens up a space where the empiricist's world of sensory experience and the rationalist's realm of innate knowledge can coexist and even complement each other. In our modern world, where we often find ourselves navigating the complexities of life armed with a blend of experiences and reasoning, perhaps this synthesis is more relevant than ever. As we continue our journey of understanding the world around us and within us, let's remember that it's not always about choosing sides. Sometimes, it's about finding the middle ground and exploring the beautiful dance between experience and reasoning. Perhaps the quest for knowledge is not a tug of war between experience and reasoning, but rather a dance between the two.